Welcome to the MixologyTalk podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Julia, and we're the folks behind abarabove.com, the ultimate resource for craft bartenders, bar operators, and pretty much anybody else who's interested in making really tasty drinks.
I'm a consultant with over 10 years of hospitality experience.
And I run abarabove.com, bringing weekly cocktails and articles to help you make great drinks and grow your career behind the bar.
This is episode number 117, and this week we're talking all about bar consultants. On one hand, many bartenders aspire to earn a business card with the title of consultant on it. On the other hand, consultants in general have a bit of a bad reputation for not being worth their money. This week we're going to talk about the good and the bad and what to do if your manager or owner surprises you with a consultant walking in the door.
Surprise! So there's a lot of good news if a consultant shows up at your bar. It's not always a bad thing. I think first and foremost, I would say that the biggest thing a bar consultant brings to your bar is a fresh perspective. This can mean kind of two things. On one side, they've got the perspective of having been in the industry for a while and having seen a lot of bars. But on the other hand, I mean, one thing I know you talked a lot about in a past job was that, you had worked there for 3 years and you would tell the manager, hey, we got to fix this problem. And the manager would kind of ignore you. Well, if a consultant came in the door with goodness knows how much they're charging per hour, your manager is much more likely to listen. Yeah,
this is a really good point because they can bring up concerns that you've had. They probably see it when they walk in the door, and they will kind of reinforce what you were kind of saying over years. It is a bit frustrating when that happens, but if you keep your head on, your focus on improving the bar and the bar program, at the end of the day, you're still going to get results no matter who came up with the idea. Could be a bitter pill to swallow, but if you're in for results, you just got one on the board. So
I don't recommend the "I told you so" approach.
No, definitely not.
Probably not such.
No.
But in addition to that, I would say, like I said a moment ago, you can leverage their experience. Bar consultants go to a lot of bars. They aren't working in the same place for 4 years. And what that means is that they can see the best of what each of these different bars has done. And they can say, wow, this one, they really got an amazing system figured out for setting up your mise en place or something. And so what they can do is they can pick and choose. They say, wow, that bar did this really well and this bar did that really well. At the next client I go to, I'm going to incorporate both of those things. And so I think you get a tremendous benefit from working with a consultant in that way.
Yeah, you're exposed to a lot more information, a lot more systems, and as Julia mentioned, you kind of pick and choose which ones are best practices and you can apply them. And it just kind of strengthens their knowledge as a consultant and what they offer a bar or restaurant. The other thing to consider is there's a big opportunity here for personal growth. As we mentioned, a bar consultant will bring a lot of experience behind them, and this is a good opportunity for you to get to know their systems and how they approach a project. And there's a lot of benefit in being close and working with a consultant.
Especially if you want to become a consultant someday.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for better or worse, you can watch how they're doing things.
Right.
Wow, they're doing a really good job of this. Or, wow, he really peeved a couple people off doing that. And you can sort of take notes.
Right.
What they do well, you can take notes and do that. What they don't do well, you can take notes and not do that.
Yeah, and incorporate that into your consulting practice when you become a consultant is all the lessons learned, both good and bad.
Right.
The other benefit is you get to add this person to your network. This is something that we talk a lot about on the podcast is developing a network, and it's almost redundant at this point. I keep mentioning it.
I'm sure you're tired of hearing it.
But it's so true. I mean, you add them to your network, all of a sudden you're kind of exposed to their network as well. Mm-hmm. So you kind of just exponentially increase your own network. So it's a really good move if the consultant is any good to add them to your network.
Well, and I think regardless of whether the consultant's any good, I'd be pretty surprised if any consultant didn't have any network at all.
Right.
I mean, the fact of the matter is that's where most consultants get their work. And so no matter what, I mean, we always talk about maintaining your reputation in the bar industry. I would say also be careful because your bar consultant probably knows lots and lots of people. And so So I would say be careful. in terms of how you talk about that consultant in the industry. They probably have a well-established network. But again, to your benefit, you can leverage that network and say, hey, I worked with Joe last week. I heard he knows you. I'd love to make an introduction. And you can go from there. So it's certainly something you can leverage.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, they're bringing a lot of knowledge to the table. This is a really good opportunity for you to pick their brain, to ask them questions, to get their perspective on things. And it allows you kind of to step outside of your working environment and kind of see what else is out there. This is a really good positive thing that you can bring with a consultant, a bar consultant.
Absolutely. I mean, you may or may not have this opportunity. It really depends on what capacity you are working with that consultant. If you're a bar back and the consultant swoops in to put really high-end cocktails on the menu, it might be hard to find a way to have that conversation.
Right.
But if it's possible, I say go for it.
Yeah.
It's definitely a good thing.
Yeah. The other thing is... back up. So one of the last kind of highlights of, the good points of having a bar consultant come in is this is a really good opportunity to get things fixed. If you're really focused on having a better bar program and getting things to run smoother, this is a really, really good opportunity to invest in the bar program.
Absolutely. Well, I think if your owner or manager has chosen to invest this kind of money in the program, it means they care.
Yeah.
And it means they want stuff fixed. So if that means you need to swallow the bitter pill, like Chris mentioned, and put a bug in that consultant's ear about this problem that's been nagging you for 3 years, so be it. That problem might actually get fixed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a great opportunity to think positive about this. If a consultant runs in the door, the first thing you should think is, excellent. The folks running this establishment really care. Now let's leverage it as much as possible. And actually, we'll get to that a little bit later in this episode. Yeah,
and so on the flip side of this whole thing is the bad. Because there are, as we mentioned earlier in the program, a bad reputation for consultants. I think it potentially has been earned, but I think there's also some things to be aware of and some things to kind of keep in the back of your head.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a gossip element to this. I think that people love talking about this terrible consultant that swooped into their bar and was a huge jerk and wasted a bunch of money because it's a great story.
Right.
I think it's less of an exciting story to talk about this bar who came in and revolutionized the bar program. I don't know. I just think people talk more about the negative.
Sure, absolutely.
So I guess my point being, I think consultants do have a negative reputation, but don't write them off immediately.
Yeah.
That being said, there are some downsides. There are some risks that come with hiring a consultant or having a consultant swoop into your bar. I think the most obvious one is if the consultant isn't any good, it'll be a waste of time and money, first of all.
Yeah.
But perhaps more expensive of all is you may demoralize the team and a bunch of people might leave.
Yeah, and this could really set a bar program back in a restaurant.
In a bad way.
Yeah, absolutely. Digging yourself out from a bad consultant can probably cost you a lot more money and time than you invested in the consultant as well. So having a right consultant and having somebody that has a really good reputation, good track record for work is really, really important if you're an owner or manager looking to hire a consultant.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of that is, if you're bringing somebody in, you're kind of implicitly telling your team that you don't believe that they can do what this consultant can do.
Right.
And while you may not intend to say that, unfortunately, it's probably what they're going to hear.
Right.
So there's a risk there, and there's a little bit of perhaps some proactive communication that you may want to consider if you're the one choosing to bring in a consultant. But I think it's just a risk that you should be aware of.
Absolutely. And, from a bartender perspective, when a consultant comes in, it can feel like you no longer own your program.
Yeah.
If you have a lead bartender in place and they're doing a good job, you got to make sure you go out of your way to kind of reassure them and say, look, you're doing a fantastic job. We're bringing this person in because of this reason. And tell them, okay, this is the scope of work that we're going to have them do.
And actually, that's a perfect introduction to our next section. Well done. Which is what to do if a consultant walks in the door and you are working as a part of that bar program and you don't know anything about it.
Right.
The consultant walks in, management says, hey, this is consultant Joe. What?
Yeah.
If you're surprised, what next? And I think that, to your point, the first thing that you should do is try to figure out the scope of what they're here to do. No consultant ever was hired to do everything.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense, frankly, and it would be way too expensive. So I think the first thing you should do is at least try to figure out what they're here for. On the one hand, they might be there to do a rebranding project. They might be doing an Instagram project, for all you know.
Right.
Or they might be there to retrain the whole staff on free pouring. Very, very different projects.
Right.
And I think a very different impact on the bar.
Well, and I think that one thing from the consultant perspective is when you go into a establishment and you start to build out kind of what you're going to be doing, you have very specific action items that you want to accomplish while you're there. So understanding what those are from a bartender perspective is a good thing. Like you figure out what they're there for. They're not going to do it all, to your point earlier.
Right.
But they're going to be pretty targeted on what they want to accomplish while they're there.
Absolutely. I think the next point, I think it goes without saying, and it's something we repeat a lot, but be professional.
Yeah.
Really, no matter what the consultant is like. I don't care if it's Mrs. Doubtfire who walks in the door. You should be professional. And again...
That's an old movie
I know.
reference. Wow.
I know. You're welcome. A little pop culture reference for you. 10 points. But my point is, be professional no matter whether they are or not. Because, again, your reputation precedes you. That bar consultant probably knows a lot of people. Everybody else in your bar is also looking at you, whether or not you're a leader. They're looking at how everybody else is responding to this consultant to decide how they're going to respond. If you take that sort of lead and own it and perhaps grit your teeth, but, treat that consultant as a professional, as a member of your team, I think it's so important to put you in the right light. Right.
And I think one of the biggest things that we can do as a bartender or someone in the bar community is we see a lot of people every single day. We're really good about reading people, sizing them up really quickly, figuring out what their motives are. Is this guy coming in for a good time, or is he going to be kind of a scumbag and we got to keep an eye on him? Like, these are talents that we have interacting with a large group of people on a day-to-day basis. Use those skills that you have developed already on that. I mean, we do that with any new member of our team, with new members of management, and we should be doing the same thing with consultants, figuring out, what are their motives? Are they here? It's a little bit more of an ego drive.
Yeah.
Like, that's what their thing is about? Or are they here genuinely to help a bar program? You should probably get that pulse pretty quickly, I would imagine.
I would think so. And I think the sort of ego-driven consultant is kind of the worst case. It's kind of part of the reason that consultants have a bad reputation.
Right.
And in that case, you may just want to tread lightly, avoid confrontation, learn what you can.
Yeah.
And wait it out.
Yeah.
In that sort of, take what you read and go with it. But again, be professional and do the best with the situation that you have. On the sort of flip side of that, if they're not there for their ego, if they're there because they genuinely care about your bar program, you just
this is
won
the
the
best
lottery.
case scenario. Yeah, it really is.
It's a huge opportunity. You just got the chance to have like the mentor of a lifetime, and you don't even have to pay for it.
Right. Yeah. If you play your cards right, you build a good relationship with a consultant. You build that up so that way you can communicate afterwards. That is the best possible case scenario.
Absolutely.
For working with a consultant, for sure.
And really, regardless of what you think of the guy, I would say that it's worthwhile to align with them. Whether or not you may be a bartender, you may be a bar back, you may be a bar manager, but don't fight this because, to be a bit crude, your manager's paying him a lot more than you, and your manager has a lot of personal vested interest in believing him over you.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a good point. This person is considered very skilled at what they do. And they've been brought in for a reason. So you're not going to win.
Right.
And if it's a case where the consultant clearly doesn't know what they're doing and they're beyond their depth of knowledge, they're clearly out of their realm of comfort. If you want to approach your management or the owner with this information, there's a really good way to do it, and that is don't make it personal. Don't say, this guy's a jerk, this guy attacked me, this guy's, he's out for my job.
He's got a weird look in his eye.
Right. Like, say, okay, he said this thing, and I don't think that's correct. I did my homework. This is what it means.
Right.
This is how we actually do this.
Be objective.
Be objective.
Yeah.
Is really super important. And, have your facts straight. Don't focus on the small things. He said this one thing this one time that wasn't right. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But if they're clearly not aligned with current best practices or something like that, it's going to be pretty obvious.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think as you start to sort of size up your consultant and figure out what the best way is to work with them, find a way to, again, if you know the scope of their project, see if you can help. If especially if you're in a leadership position in your bar. If you're a bar manager and a consultant swoops in, figure out what they're there to do and align with them, because they're not going to be there forever. And when they're gone, you got to be a leader again. And if you've spent the last 2 months in a pissing match with a consultant, you've lost all your credibility among your team, and you've lost all your credibility among the people that hired you, and you're in a really bad position. But if you align with that consultant, find a way to sort of bridge the gap between your team, the consultant, and the bar program. I mean, you're going to lift everybody all at once.
Right, absolutely. And just keep that in mind as you start to work with this person, what the motives are. This is going to improve our bar program. It's going to increase efficiency. I mean, those are the things you want to keep your eye on and your focus on, and see how you can kind of complement the consultant. Not verbally.
You look great.
I know. Good job, bud. But complement their work. So if they're doing a training exercise, write the notes down, send them out to your team afterwards. If they're doing a training on specific spirits or wine or specific cocktail recipes, look to make note cards or something to really reinforce the training. If this is a good consultant, that's going to go a long way to kind of hammer that information into your staff and show that you're actually everyone's aligned. And that's super important.
Absolutely. And you're going to build that relationship with that consultant. And again, that goes back to the network and the reputation. So it's kind of a win-win-win, even though it might be really hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I just wanted to make one final point. If you are working with a consultant who, for whatever reason, you don't believe is worth their salt, I mean, we talked about the one option where you can go to your manager, you can be objective, and you can say, here's the deal, X, Y, and Z, here's the information I have. But frankly, nothing may happen.
Right. And you got to be okay with that.
You got to be okay with that, because the fact of the matter is, if that manager fires that consultant, he's got to answer to the owner. The owner may have been the one who hired the consultant, so the manager may not have a say in it anyway. Right. So nothing may happen, and that will stink. But at least you get it off your conscience.
Right.
So I think, again, keep the emotions out of it, keep it objective, and I think that may be a positive experience. You got to make a call based on the culture of your own bar, though.
Right, absolutely. And I think another thing to consider, if the consultant clearly isn't any good, and that one-on-one didn't work, or you just don't feel comfortable having that conversation, is something to keep in mind is this consultant's going to leave.
Right.
Their timer is going to run out, and they're going to be on to their next project, and try and make the best of it. Take whatever positive aspects of this experience and internalize that.
Right.
Look for those little kernels of knowledge, sweep all the other stuff away that doesn't make any sense, and just wait it out. It's terrible to say, but that's kind of the practical reality of dealing with a terrible consultant, is they're going to go.
Exactly. I mean, it's a short-term project, and so that's the benefit of it, is you're not stuck with them forever, and you may have to grit your teeth for a couple months or something,
right.
But they're not there forever, and so the worst-case scenario is just to wait it out while being professional. So to kind of wrap everything up and to summarize this whole episode,
a consultant sweeping into your bar program isn't necessarily a negative thing. It could be a very positive experience. It could be a lot of opportunity for you to learn, to grow your network, and just keep that in mind. Look for those opportunities to get to know this consultant better, how they operate, the systems they put into place, because these are potentially items and systems that you can implement when you run your own bar program if you're not a manager or lead bartender at this point. So this could be things that you can institute into a new bar program and kind of propel your career. So look for those opportunities. If they're not any good, we've already kind of highlighted some things to consider. Still be professional, because you don't want to kind of be that person. And so look to support your bar team the best possible way you can, and just learn the small things that you can from this person, the good and the bad.
And perhaps position yourself as the leader
Right.
when they leave.
Absolutely.
Because they will leave.
They will leave. Absolutely.
As always, you can find the show notes for this episode at mixologytalk.com/117. And if you're not watching on YouTube, you may not have realized that this is our second episode with video.
Yeah, hopefully it's a little bit better in focus. My head's not chopped off. Small steps, baby steps.
Baby steps. We're definitely getting, well, I hope you'll agree that we're getting better at it. And if you're not on YouTube, we would love for you to hop on over to our YouTube channel, which you can find linked in the show notes, and subscribing, because we'll be doing this from here on out, unless, of course, it goes horribly. In which case, no promises.
Then we're just going to shutter everything up and call it a day.
Get it. We're going back to audio.
Done.
It took a lot of persuading to get Chris to start wearing pants. So
Yeah.
I want you to know that there was a huge investment of time on my part to get video as a part of our process. So
Yeah.
I hope you'll join us and let us know what you think. And we'll catch you in a couple weeks.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Never miss an episode by subscribing in iTunes or YouTube. And as always, check out the show notes by clicking on the right.